checking to determine inappropriate action. Stephen A., what's your reaction to this?
Well, it's unfortunate. Obviously, you don't need to be getting behind the wheel of a car if you're of an automobile if you're inebriated. So we know that was irresponsible on his part, which I'm sure he would readily admit, and you just wish him the best. I find myself, however, feeling incredibly sad for Vince Young. I think he had a lot of football left in him. I think he's somebody who believes he had a lot of football left in him. To have his career cut short because he was stigmatized because, you know, obviously while playing under Jeff Fisher in Tennessee, he was perceived as being an individual without the intestinal fortitude to lead at the quarterback position because he was a bit too sensitive, reacted to criticism, fan criticism, coaching criticism, et cetera, that got the best of him. And because it got the best of him, it impeded his progress. Ultimately, his career was able to continue in terms of landing in different spots, but, you know, being in Green Bay and playing behind Aaron Rodgers, that ain't putting forth any work whatsoever. Being in Philadelphia, he wasn't too bad in Philadelphia. He didn't have the greatest performances, but he was better than some of the other options that they've had since him. And then when you take into account, Skip, when you see one chance after another being aimed in the direction of a Johnny Manziel, who's seen yet again, you know, partying during the AFC Championship game at a bar, allegedly with alcohol and what have you. And you see the fact that guys like him and others, for whatever bevy of reasons, seem to be getting one opportunity after another, while Vince Young can't find himself getting an opportunity. One can only imagine the level of frustration that seeps inside his soul and how that ultimately can affect him. And again, I'd lean towards you, Skip, in terms of how honest and open you've been about your family history and what have you, and how familiar you are with alcoholism. I'm certainly not trying to imply that with Vince Young, because one incident does not an alcoholic make. But at the same time, I think it's important to point out that people who usually lean on substances, whether it's alcohol or something else, it's usually some form of method to disguise bigger issues, permeating them, sullying them, and bringing them down. And I definitely think that if that has anything to do with Vince Young, that is definitely plausible in this particular situation.
This is a tough one. As you know, I know Vince. I like Vince. I've always believed in Vince as a quarterback. He proved he was a quarterback at the highest level of college football, one of the great championship game performances we have ever seen as he led Texas to a big upset of a heavily favored USC team in the Rose Bowl. He performed at a very high level in the National Football League. He was 31-19 as a starter, in my opinion, in spite of a head coach who never wanted to draft him in the first place. He did make 2 Pro Bowls. He was the Offensive Rookie of the Year. So he performed at a very high level. And then you eloquently stated what happened. He was viewed as too sensitive, and I don't want to dredge all that back up, but he fell apart with his coach, Jeff Fisher, and then he bounced around and couldn't catch on with anybody else. And it's one of the saddest stories I've ever had to watch. I was proud of Vince because he's had financial issues, but he wound up back at his alma mater, University of Texas, Austin, Texas, and seemed very committed, and I'm sure is very committed, to working for the university's Division of Diversity and Community Engagement, raising money for first-generation students, students from lower incomes, and by all accounts was doing a great job, and I hope will continue to be able to do a great job of that. Yep. But I'm with you. I'm sure Vince, it just tears his heart out. He's only 32. He's been out for 4 years. He's only 32 years of age. And I don't know whether he watched the game or not, but the obviously New England at Denver game featured a nearly 40-year-old quarterback against a 38-year-old quarterback, and Vince has to think, what happened to me? Where did it all go? And he was so good in high school and college and for a while in pro football that I'm sure it just tears him apart. And I, you know, again, you brought up Johnny Manziel. And again, I don't want to make too much of the video some of us saw. I saw it on the internet that was taken of Johnny at a bar in Dallas during the New England-Denver game. And look, a lot of NFL players do not watch the playoffs, in part because maybe they lost to one of the playoff teams and they're sick of it and they don't want to have to sit and watch it anymore. So God knows how many didn't watch. But here's Johnny trying to prove himself. He's proven next to nothing, in my opinion, in the NFL. And we see the video of him from across the Horseshoe Bar, and he's facing away from the giant screen featuring Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. And it's just such a bad look. There's nothing wrong with it in and of itself. It's just another bad look for Johnny Manziel. And a lot of GMs around the league are going to say, wow, do we really want to give him another shot? Because he almost seems to be taunting the NFL in saying, I don't need to watch this. You know, I got this. I can yuck it up. I can party it up during this game because there's nothing for me to learn watching these two. It's just a bad look to me. Well, in the context of Vince Young, it makes me a little sick, frankly.
Well, Skip, a couple of things. Number one, let me correct myself because I mentioned Green Bay when he played in Tennessee and then he played with the Eagles in 2011 and started 3 games, played in 6, went 1-2, never played for Green Bay Packers. So let me correct myself.
He was there in the camp. Yeah,
he was there in the camp, but he never played.
I thought he'd made the team. He was the last cut.
Right, and then he was the last cut. But I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. The other thing I want to say is this: you brought up 39 going on 40, Peyton Manning, 38 going on 39 and Tom Brady. Vince Young must have been watching that, and he must be sick because he's only 32.
Yeah.
I got one better for you.
All right.
How do you think it felt for him to watch Cam Newton?
No.
I mean, when you think about Cam, well, let's look at this.
Yeah.
Let's look at this. Cam, young, African-American, dual threat, and not only that, in a system where, remember, the 4,000-yard season, dissipated to 38, dissipated then, but the level of patience given to him, Ron Rivera, Coach Shula, and others, how they stuck with him. Now Cam Newton has ascended. So Vince Young is sitting there saying so much in common with this guy. And if I had people who were patient enough with me, I might still be playing. Yet here I am, happy to help. But the things that he's doing as a job right now, which he's relying on for a paycheck, is something he could have done in his off time out of the kindness of his heart. If he were a star quarterback, going back to Austin in the off season, generating funds to uplift those impoverished and beyond, he could have done that in his off time of his own volition without needing a paycheck. And he still would have generated just as much, if not more money. But now he has to do it to earn an honest living. Why? Because the NFL has distanced itself from him when he had all the potential in the world. I think it was more painful for him to watch Cam Newton than it was for him to watch Brady and Peyton.
Yep.
Conversations we never like to have on the show, and hopefully we won't have to in the future. Up next, we switch gears back to the NBA. Tyronn Lue got his first win as the Cavs head man. Congratulations, beating the T-Wolves. Stephen A is going to interview him later today. He's in Cleveland. What did we see from the Cavs last night, though? Skip and Stephen A will tell us next.